when you go to market, there's different kind of sub-markets, and each one is tailored to a specific kind of demographic and clientele. And so I had registered for one, and I had done all this research, and I was like, this is the one that I need to go to. And I walk in, I have my badge, and I'm walking around, and I just realized, like, this is really not where I'm supposed to be. It was very much an older demographic, and I just started crying. I was like, this was a mistake. I shouldn't have come up here, by myself. I don't know what I'm doing. And this, like, really kind woman, said, are you okay? Are you in the wrong place? And I said, I really think I'm in the wrong place. I don't think this is the one I'm supposed to be at. And she kind of asked me, well, what's your shop? What kind of brands are you looking for? And she was like, you need to go down, 2 levels down and down the hall, and that's one you need to go to. And, just ask sales reps to help you with writing orders. People will be helpful. And she kind of went through like a mock order with me, and she was so kind, and she didn't have to do that. And that's something I think I've carried with me throughout my time as a business owner, is that, if somebody does reach out or they feel a little lost, like, I don't want to brush anybody off, because you never know what 5 minutes might mean to them and might do for them.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, my name is Andrew McClendon. I'm your host of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here in the Propel Production Podcast Studio in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Hattie Collins.
Thank you for having me.
Did I say it right that time?
Yes.
Good. So, Hattie, you are the owner of Hattie Sparks Interiors. You're in New Orleans?
Yes, I'm in New Orleans.
And tell us what you do.
I am the owner and lead creative of Hattie Sparks Interiors. We are a full-service interior design company. We handle full-scale renovations and full-scale redecorations for clients. We accept clients all across the country, so about 50% of our work is in New Orleans, and the other half is all across the country. I started about 2.5 years ago, right before COVID shut everything down, and it's been kind of nonstop since then.
Which is interesting because a lot of things did stop, right? But not so much for your business. What was going on with that? What's your take on that?
So I started this business late 2019, and I'd been in retail for many, many years on the consulting side, and I owned my own shops for a long time, and I needed a shift, and this was a very natural, welcome change for me, and things were going well. I had about 5 clients signed on that I was working with, and in March, mid-March, as everybody knows, everything kind of 2020, right. Everything came to a screeching halt, and I was a little panicked, thinking I just made this big leap in my career, and I can't go back to retail now. And it was so I just thought, I'll get these 5 clients taken care of, I'll figure it out. And about a month after the shutdown, I just started getting emails, and they never stopped. And I think a lot of people, myself included, thought, oh, this is going to be 2 weeks and it's going to be over. And after about 2 weeks, think the realization settled in, this is going to be much longer. People also, I don't think, had spent as much time at home as they were in that, in the beginning of COVID and even now today. So I think people realized, okay, this money that we would spend on vacations, concerts, going out to eat, let's put this back into our home. And people really started, putting a premium on their spaces and doing these things that they had been putting off for a long time and really making their homes a reflection of themselves. That became such a priority for people. And so in this new industry that I was a part of, that was really beneficial for us. And, I came into it also at the beginning, a very steep learning curve, just being in a new industry, but then also with the pandemic layered on top and now all the supply chain issues layered on top. So it's been a little bit of baptism by fire.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of people who have been wonderful mentors and, helpful along the way.
It's really fascinating how COVID impacted, businesses differently. And some, obviously, we know about these stores, are just devastated. And then others were overwhelmed. And it's really, really been fascinating to talk to different entrepreneurs about their experience with that. Mm-hmm. So you grew up in Texas?
I did. Texas and Colorado. My parents are from Houston. I was born in Houston. We lived there until I was in first grade. We moved to Colorado outside of Aspen when I was 6 or 7, and we lived there for 10 years. Oh, wow. And it was a wonderful place to grow up. We had a lot of independence. I'm one of 6 children.
6 girls.
6 girls. And we just had a wonderful childhood up there. My dad's an entrepreneur. He was back and forth between Colorado and Houston for a while. And we were always back in Texas, summer camp. My parents lived in Texas. But my mom and dad just wanted us to get out of the city, and they wanted us to have kind of this, independent, kind of idyllic childhood. And we ended up moving back when I was 16. My parents moved to Kerrville, which is kind of in between San Antonio and Austin in the Hill Country. And we grew up.
Now, is that where you went to your summer camps in the Hill Country?
I did. Yeah. I went to Camp Mystic in Hunt, which is an all-girls camp.
Yeah.
And we moved back there when I was 16, so I finished high school there. It's a big culture shock from, a small town in Colorado to a small town in Texas, but it was, a big public high school, the whole deal. So they still live there.
In Kerrville.
How
about that?
Yeah.
So my youngest girl went to Heart of the Hills.
Okay. My cousins went there.
Yeah, for years and years. And that's leaves an impact on your life.
It does.
For sure. And so you went to college in Texas then?
I did. I went to TCU in Fort Worth.
And you studied?
I went in as a history major thinking I was going to go to law school. And the summer before college, 2 of my sisters and I went to Europe. And I always loved art. I always loved, creative things. And we were traveling around France and Italy, and we were going to all these museums. And I was like, this is really cool. And this combines, all this art and this history. It combines 2 of the things I love the most. So I changed my major to art history, and I minored in business. And, I didn't know what I was going to do with an art history degree at first. Fort Worth has a great cultural district. I started working for the museums up there, and I thought that's what I was going to do. And when I was finishing school, it was the recession, and my advisor at TCU said, you're not going to get a job with an art history degree unless you have a master's. So she had gotten her master's and PhD at Tulane, and she encouraged me to apply, and she said, if anything, you don't have to get into the workforce for 2 more years. And you'll
because even with a master's in 2012, that
might not have done the
trick either.
I finished grad school in 2010, and it was still not, things were not back up and cranking yet. So, I got a scholarship to Tulane to get my master's, and I was thankful not to go into debt to get a graduate degree. And when I finished, and that's what brought me to New Orleans, everywhere was still on a hiring freeze. It was still very much the recession. Right. And I didn't really know what to do. And I was committed to staying in New Orleans. And that's how I first got into the retail world. I worked for Anthropologie, which is a big national company. I knew somebody who was working for them on their opening team, so I got hired on their opening team and did operations for them at their store in the French Quarter. It's a massive store and handled a lot of special ordering for the company. Sorry, I know that was like we jumped ahead a little bit.
No, I mean, it's interesting when you think about it, and we talked about how COVID changed lives and business lives, but, you know, before that, the recession, the Great Recession, and, you know, this plan to be in the world of museums, but there are no jobs. So
and
now you're in, you know, the other end of the spectrum, and you're in retail. Right?
Yeah. And it was frustrating as, you know, I was 24 and I was very young. I look back now, I'm like, oh gosh, I was so young. But I was out of grad school and I had, you know, 5 great internships under my belt and a master's degree. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake to find a job. And all the museums are on hiring freezes. Galleries, you know, they're commission based, and they were just like, nobody's really buying art right now. Nonprofits wanted me to have 5 years of experience. And so it was kind of this, you know, with that field, kind of this chicken and egg situation. I needed experience to get a job, but nobody would give me the experience. And so I didn't really know where to start there. And I am thankful that it led me to retail, because that job that I had really taught me a lot and prepared me for owning my own business, and taught me a lot of great best practices for customer service and work ethic. And, you know, so there is a silver lining there.
Oh, for sure. So you got to see how the corporate side of retail worked. And so at what point did you say it's time to do my own gig?
Well, I was working there and I was meeting a lot of artists and designers that they had committed to working with. You know, they're really great as a company about tapping into local talent and collaborating with them. And they may do, you know, a capsule collection for that particular shop, or they may sell it at a few other stores regionally. So we would have events with these really great artists and designers, and I would ask them, you know, where do you sell your stuff? I'm interested in your other products. And most of the answers were, oh, you know, once a month at an arts market or on Etsy, but Etsy wasn't really what it is today. You know, back in 2010, and, you know, or a website. So it was kind of hard to track their products down. And I just thought, you know, at this point, it was 2010, it was, 5 years after Katrina, the Saints had just won the Super Bowl. New Orleans was very it was on a, you know, great upswing. And I just thought, what a shame that there's not a place locally that focuses on these really beautifully made products. So I had this.
And so talk about what products that you're referring to.
So it was a mix.
Not so much for Anthropologie, but for your business.
For my shop, the local and regional products I carried, it was a lot of art, jewelry, candles, you know, personal care items, soaps, lotions, perfume, a great makeup line, a lot of paper goods. And then I got into local and regional clothing designers. So we had a couple really great clothing lines, accessory lines. And there's so much talent in this region. And I just felt like it was very underappreciated and underrepresented. And so I had this idea for a shop that really celebrated these craftsmen, and I just needed to figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, so how did you figure that out? I mean, obviously there's expense, and then figuring everything out. So kind of walk us through what that looks like as you're 24?
I think I just turned 26 when the first shop opened.
Okay. And so tell us what that looks like, and how you made that decision, what the finances looked like, and what you do for capital, friends and family, and give us a little walkthrough of that.
So I'm glad you asked this question, and it's interesting because, you know, I'm 35, and so when I was about 5 years into my business, there was kind of this big tidal wave of female entrepreneurs, and I would listen to interviews, and they would all talk about how they got started, and what always seemed missing to me was like, well, how did you really get started? Like, I know you didn't like bootstrap it and save up for this. You know, you started this business when you were 25 or 26. And I always wish that people would be more honest and say I had money from my parents or I had money from my grandparents or, whatever. There was always a big chunk of their story missing, and these businesses just materialized out of thin air.
Right.
I had money from my grandfather. He had 11 grandchildren, and he left us all money when he passed. And most of it we all saved, and some of it I decided to use towards opening my own business. And my dad is an entrepreneur. He's owned several businesses throughout his life. And so I went to him and I said, can you help me set up a loan to myself? Because I first tried going to a bank and they kind of laughed at me. And they said, you're 25, you have one credit card with a $500 limit, and you have no student debt, which means you have no loans you're paying off, which means you're just not building credit at all. And I was very lucky not to have any student loan debt, and that is not lost on me even today. But they just were kind of you have no credit, and so we can't loan you money because we don't actually know if you'll be able to pay it back on time because you haven't really proven you've been able to do that. And that was eye-opening for me, and I was like, oh, wow, I really need to kind of build that up and show that I'm responsible. But if they won't give me the money, then who will? And so I went to my dad and I said, I have this money from Granddad. I would like to use some of it to start my own business. And he was like, you're a little nuts. It's not that far from a recession we just came through. But here's how you set it up. If this is what you want to do, let's, set up a loan to yourself. So he helped me set that up. And so instead of paying a bank back every month, I paid myself back every month.
That's right.
And, I stuck to it, and I was really strict about paying myself back. And that's how I did it.
Yeah. So you had to lease a space, and then the design, the feel, and what had you been working on concepts for that?
I had. So I had this idea in 2010, and I opened in early 2012. So for about a year and a half, I was keeping inspiration photos. I had a binder, back when you would tear things out of magazines, and it was full of interiors that I really loved, and Pinterest was very new. So I was, putting things on Pinterest that I loved. And a lot of the fixtures inside were pieces of furniture that my mom had bought at estate sales and had in storage. So I had, my checkout desk was a big, beautiful antique desk that she had just sitting in storage. I painted the walls myself. I had these big blue and white stripes on the walls. I made all of the hanging racks myself from pipes from Home Depot, and they were just so annoyed because I kept coming back in asking them to cut lengths of pipe for me. So all of the interior, that was me. That was me in there painting and installing things, and kind of keeping that part of the overhead low. I didn't want to, blow a bunch of money on a big fancy build out. I wanted the products to really speak for themselves. And so I found a space uptown near Tulane, and I was familiar with it from when I was a student there. And it was right off Maple Street by the Starbucks. And, the landlord was a little kooky, as a lot of New Orleans landlords can be. But he was great, and, he believed in me, and he gave me a good term. And, I quit my previous job in December of 2011, and I opened in February of 2012. So it was very quick.
Yeah. So you had to, you're spending money, you got a lease, and now you got to get some product in there. Yeah. And so how did that work as far as you getting help? Did you start with an employee or two, or what does that look like?
No. So I worked alone for probably the first 3 or 4 months. And I was closed on Sundays, so I was working 6 days a week. And then one day, a friend of mine, we had met working together at Anthropologie, and she's still one of my very best friends to this day. She walked in the store, and, she was like, I was interviewing for a job. I'm trying to find a new job. And I was interviewing around the corner at this other boutique, and I was like, oh, great, well, how'd it go? And she's like, oh, terrible. I wish I could just come work here. And I was like, well, why don't you come? I need some help. Why don't you come work here? And so she came to work for me a couple days a week, and she was doing something else as well. So she would come work a couple days a week, and we just had the most fun. It was, she was great to be around. She had great ideas. She would come with me to market. So she worked for me for a few months, and then we hired another person to come on and help. She was an accounting student at Tulane, and so she would come in like once or twice a week.
So how did you market your business initially?
So initially, because we opened right after Mardi Gras, my sister works for a promotional products company, and they print your logo on, coffee mugs, stickers, pens, everything. And I said, will you, can you make me koozies with my logo and my website? And then can you also make me Mardi Gras beads with the medallion with my logo and my website?
You're kidding.
And she was like, sure, yeah. So I went around that Mardi Gras and I passed out koozies and beads to everybody. I was going up and down St. Charles just saying my store's opening in 2 weeks. Go to the website, check it out. My cousin is a graphic designer, so he did my logo and my website for me. And I still love that logo. It's like,
that is New Orleans grassroots.
So yeah, I was just like, here's a beer and a koozie and a bead. Come shop with me. And people would come in, and I still have people send me pictures. To this day of those koozies. They're like, I still have this, 10 years later.
You are kidding.
So it felt very grassroots, but social media at that time really was not big.
Yeah.
Instagram was a couple years old, maybe, but people weren't really using it for their business.
Right.
And then Twitter, I think, Twitter had kind of taken off for entrepreneurs who worked in like the restaurant business, food trucks, that was very big. But social media was not what it is now. And so I was like, how do I get the word out? And, New Orleans is very much like a word of mouth town. Right. So that helped a lot.
Yeah, let's take a break. We'll get in a word from our sponsor and pick it up on the other side. One of our sponsors, MBD Maintenance, is excited to announce that after 25 years, they're rebranding their company name to Pivotal. It's the same ownership, same staff, same location. Just a new name that better represents the services that they provide their clients across the Southeast United States. Pivotal does commercial building construction and renovation. They do tenant improvement work in retail and office facilities. They do installation of dock doors in distribution centers, storm and fire damage repair, and catastrophe recovery for national disasters. The team at Pivotal is simply the best. They're experienced, they crush schedules, and they have an impeccable safety record. If Pivotal can help you with your next project, you can find them online at pivotalperforms.com. And we are back with Hattie Collins. Hattie, tell us, how did you build your business? Like when you break down and you think about, okay, if I'm just going to look at getting, forget all the frilly stuff, like what it really took for you to get that first boutique off the ground. How do you look back on those days?
I look back on that and I think about a lot of it was founded on relationships I had built with people. Mm-hmm. Whether they were an artist or a designer that I picked up, to carry in my shop, or if they were somebody who stepped in and gave me a piece of advice. I think connections that I formed and relationships that I built with people really did help me get that first one and even the second one off the ground. With the first one, over the course of about a year and a half, 2 years, I'd built kind of this database of local designers and local artists, and I've made an effort to go to their shows and reach out to them, via email and kind of interface with them so that when it came time to sell their product in my store, I wasn't some stranger, sending them an email out of the blue. And they were comfortable with me. A lot of them, it was the first time their product had been wholesaled or carried in a boutique. And so I wanted them to trust me, and I wanted them to know I'm going to represent your product and, your creativity well. And then when I think about, the first time that I went to market, I had no idea what I was doing. And I did go to market to buy, brands that were sold nationally because I did need to fill in gaps And I just remember it was my first time to New York. I'd never been. I was staying at a friend's apartment, and he was down here. LSU was in the national championship. So he was like, stay in my apartment. And, I was taking cabs everywhere. It was like so inefficient. Just was excited to be there.
Right.
But I went to the Javits Center, which if you've never been, it's massive. I mean, it is just this enormous building. And I had registered for, when you go to market, there's different kind of sub-markets, and each one is tailored to a specific kind of demographic and clientele. And so I had registered for one, and I had done all this research, and I was like, this is the one that I need to go to. And I walk in, I have my badge, and I'm walking around, and I just realized, like, this is really not where I'm supposed to be. It was very much an older demographic, and I just started crying. And I was like, this was a mistake. I shouldn't have come up here, by myself. I don't know what I'm doing. And this, like, really kind woman, said, are you okay? Are you in the wrong place? And I said, I really think I'm in the wrong place. I don't think this is the one I'm supposed to be at. And she kind of asked me, well, what's your shop? What kind of brands are you looking for? And she was like, you need to go down, 2 levels down and down the hall, and that's one you need to go to. And, just ask sales reps to help you with writing orders. People will be helpful. And she kind of went through like a mock order with me, and she was so kind, and she didn't have to do that. And that's something I think I've carried with me throughout my time as a business owner, is that, if somebody does reach out or they feel a little lost, like, I don't want to brush anybody off, because you never know what 5 minutes might mean to them and might do for them. So she was incredibly helpful, and I went down and got set up at the correct place, and I walked in and I was like, okay, these are my people. This is where I need to be.
These are my products.
And the sales reps were incredibly patient. I just kind of out the gate said, I'm new at this. This is my first time here. And I formed really great relationships with a lot of these sales reps at these showrooms. And, multi-line showrooms were who I dealt with the most. And, I got to know them, and, that made it easy to order, and that made it easy to call them and say, hey, can you hold this order, or can you push this, or we need to split this up. So I think relationships and just, being kind and being understanding and being honest and straightforward with people really did help me build my business. Because as any business owner knows, there are times where it's really, really hard. And there are times where you're kind of like, okay, cash flow is not where it needs to be this month. And, I need to make good, with this person and that person. And I think, having a good working relationship with your vendors, with your employees, with, anybody that kind of you deal with on the day to day, just helps your operations overall, because people trust you, and people know that you're not, I guess people just trust you more.
So we had a guest on last week who uses social media in a big way in her business now. And, I know we're going back 10 or 12 years in the start of your business, and social media changed during that time. But, it really struck me with Blasia Rivette that where she was building a brand through social media, and her brand was herself initially, or constantly. And I was curious how that works in your model. I mean, I seem to have read something about, like, that's how you do it as well.
Mm-hmm. So especially with the boutique. So probably 6-7 months in, I noticed there were other boutiques around town that were starting to post their new arrivals on Instagram. And it was, connected to their Facebook page. So, I started doing that as well. And I would post, multiple times a day sometimes. And now I think about it, I'm like, oh God, I could never post multiple times a day. People would just unfollow me. But that was a selling channel, and Instagram became such a important source of revenue for the business. And it allowed people, when I didn't have an e-commerce site, it allowed people who didn't live in New Orleans to shop with me. And so that became kind of like this whole other animal, because I would post, and then I would stay up until 11 o'clock at night answering people's questions about the fit or what sizes I had left, or taking people's credit cards and charging the next day. But that was so important for us, from a growth perspective, because it allowed me to expand the brand outside of New Orleans. It allowed me to really kind of gauge the waters for will e-commerce work? Do people want this? And it allowed me to move a lot of product that otherwise I wouldn't have.
That must have been pretty exciting.
It was.
Because it was all new, right?
Yeah, and it was very new, and there weren't rules to it like there are now. Now everything feels, I think it's moving away from this now, kind of back towards how it used to be. But now it's people, there's rules to social media, and you can't post more than a certain number of times a week, and it has to be captioned correctly or you won't get the engagement, and the algorithm doesn't like it when you don't post pictures with a person's face in it. And it feels so calculated now, and back then it was just here's my stuff. Do you like it? If you do, call me and I'll ship it to you. And and it really, people started telling their friends about it. And so, and on top of that too, it was very much it was a big time in the blogging world. Now they're called influencers, but in the blogging world. And I noticed that, and I would read these blogs, go to work every morning, get a coffee and sit down and read these blogs. And these were girls, my age. We were all in our mid-20s. And so I thought, this is one way that I can kind of help grow my social media following, which then will translate to dollars for my business. And so I just reached out to them and I said, do you want to do a trade? If I send you a dress, will you post on your Instagram and link to me and let people know that they can call me?
Really?
And at the time, 2012, some of these people had 10,000 followers, which now is a lot of people, but now some of these people have 1 million followers. So back then it seemed like this astronomical number. And, I just thought, if I can get 10,000 eyeballs, sets of eyeballs on my business, that's only going to be good for me.
That's fascinating.
And that really, really helped a lot.
Really?
And this was before, influencers and bloggers made a commission off of items that they sold. So I got in before that was a thing. Now, most influencers won't promote a product unless they can link to it on a website and then make a commission on the back end.
Oh, wow.
So this was before all of that. So it felt very kind of pure and exciting and really collaborative and fun. And so I think another way I built my business was on collaboration with people, collaborating with, people that had a really strong web presence, and then also local people. And we would do joint events. So I hosted a lot of events in my space. So I'd partner with, a bakery and have a king cake party, or I'd partner with, a local makeup brand, and she would do mini makeovers at the shop, and people would get, 10, 15% off. And so they would promote it to kind of their customer base, right, and I would promote it to mine. And it was really collaborative, and it was fun, you know, and I think that really helped grow the business.
It sounds so innocent.
I know. It does. I'm like, would that work today? I don't know if it would.
So how long was it before you considered and moved forward with your second location?
So I'd been open uptown for a couple of years, and I had a developer approach me about opening a shop in the South Market District, which was a brand new, they basically created a neighborhood out of parking lots in the Warehouse District in New Orleans. And it was mixed use development, luxury apartments above, shops and restaurants below. So they approached me, and at first I was a little skeptical and didn't think that I could do it. And they kind of just kept up with me, and, as new businesses were signing leases, they would let me know. And there was a really nice momentum and excitement behind it. And so 2015 decided to, end of 2014 decided to go for it. Yeah. And, that involved just a lot more work, involved a pretty big just risk in general, expanding. We doubled in square footage, so we had to double in inventory and hire more staff. So yeah, 2015, we'd been open about 3 years uptown when we opened the second location.
Cost-wise compared to your first location? I mean, many times more, multiples more.
Yeah. It was about, I kept things as like minimal as I could with the build out. Because again, I wanted the product to shine. Right. But it was about double to 2.5 times what I spent on Uptown.
And so, how did that work for you? Now you've got 2 locations. What was that initial period like?
It was really tough. I was really struggling with closing, whether or not I should close Uptown or move the location Uptown. At that point, a lot of my, client base a lot of my clients were students. And so by that point, a lot of them had graduated and moved away. This sounds kind of silly, but, there was a ton of construction and it really hindered people from getting to my shop. And we just weren't getting the traffic that we used to, but I had, a lot of sentimental attachment to it. And so initially I felt like, the downtown location was just cannibalizing business from Uptown. And then I realized nobody's really going Uptown anymore. A lot of our business was online. We did have an e-commerce platform at that point, and it wasn't working. Both locations weren't working. So I really had to think about, okay, do I close Uptown completely and focus all my time and resources on downtown, or do I move it? And eventually I just decided to close it and focus everything on downtown. And looking back, everyone can look back and say, I wish I would have done something differently. Looking back, I wish we would have just moved to a new location. But my rent was really great where I was. Yeah. And moving to Magazine Street would have, more than doubled my rent. And that was just, a cost that I couldn't really take on at that point. So we decided to close a few months. We had both for, I think, like 4 months. And then it became pretty clear we had to close Uptown.
So you go from, hey, I'm ready to expand, to quickly saying, okay, I've got to contract here, get back to one location. Mm-hmm. And then how long did you stay downtown?
We were downtown for 2 years, a little over 2 years. And there were just a lot of factors that contributed to it not working out down there. I think that area was really kind of sold to me as young professionals are going to be, working and shopping here. But it's just far enough away from the central business district that people weren't really walking there on their lunch break. Or if they were coming for lunch, they were using up all their time to eat. I did have, a lot of people that would pop in on lunch break. But and then my clients who lived uptown, what I heard from them was, I don't want to drive all the way down there, then pay for parking. It's, I only have limited time while my kids are in school or on my lunch break from work. So I think, just the location didn't end up being what I anticipated it being. There was also a really big lag in opening other retail stores. It was just me and one other boutique for a long time. So people were like, well, I'd rather just go to this area of town where there's 6 shops in one place rather than here where there's only 2. Yeah. And I did have very loyal customers who did make the effort, and I'm so appreciative of that. It was just hard down there. And then I think, 2016 in New Orleans in particular seemed to be kind of an uneasy year for people. And, we weren't doing the sales that we normally did, even at Christmas time. So 2017 was kind of like, let's see what happens. And at the time, too, I was also approached by the developers for the new airport about opening a shop in the airport. Right. And I was part of a package that this group pitched to, the airport board, and the group I was a part of won. And so there was all this excitement. So in my mind, it was kind of like, well, if downtown does shut down, I can always reopen uptown. I'll have the airport shop. And, at that point too, I think, mid 2017, I was trying to start a family. I was really burnt out, to cut down on overhead. I had let go almost all of my employees. I was working, 70 hours a week. And it was kind of soul sucking towards the end. And I realized I don't want to resent coming to work. I own this place. Yeah. My name is on the door. I shouldn't resent coming to work. And, I think in any business, there's just kind of this moment where it becomes clear, like, this is the end.
Yep. Which is that is the vast majority of entrepreneurs' experience, the very vast majority. And, but you have, you move on from there, right? And there's another part of your journey. And once you walk us through how you got into what you're really doing now, which is what we opened with, which is Hattie Sparks Interiors. Yeah. Walk us how you got to the point to make another go at it.
Okay. So I closed my shops end of 2017, and I went to work another retail job, and I just was like, this is not where I want to be. And, I got pregnant with I have twin girls. I got pregnant with them early 2018. And I wanted to stay in the retail world because that's where I was comfortable. But I didn't want to be client facing. So towards the right after my kids were born, end of 2018, I had a woman reach out to me, and she owns quite a few successful businesses, boutiques in Nashville, and she was expanding throughout the Southeast, and she wanted me to help her open her shop in New Orleans. Not run it, but just get it built out and hire the staff, get all of her permitting for her, and kind of consult a little bit on her other projects as well. At this time, too, I had a few friends that had reached out to me and said, hey, we love how you've decorated your home. Would you come help me, do this one room? Or would you help me source a few furniture pieces or consult on paint color and art placement? So I was doing kind of like these little one-off jobs for friends and even just people who followed me on social media. And I loved it so much. And it's funny because I always said, sometimes people would ask me, if you weren't doing this, what would you do? And I always said, I would be an interior designer or an interior decorator. But I always thought I have to go back to school for that, and I need a degree, and I just don't have time to go back to school at this point. But I consumed, so much media associated with interiors. So interior design magazines and blogs and, Pinterest pages, and I just loved it so much. And so when people started asking me to help them, it felt very fulfilling. It felt very natural, and I really enjoyed it. But again, I was kind of like, how am I going to make this a job and a career? So I was doing the consulting thing. I was helping a couple other brands move into the New Orleans market. And I just was like, you know what? Like, I think I have enough momentum behind this. I had a couple people ask me to help them with their entire home. And I said, I think I have enough momentum behind this. And I have, at the time, I was a single mom, and it was pretty nerve-wracking to be a single mom of very young infant twins and make a big career leap. But
oh my goodness.
I just thought, I have a safety net. I want to try it. If it doesn't work out, I know I can go back to retail. I'm good at that. I have a great track record there, and I can go back to that. And so I started focusing on interiors full-time in September of 2019, and I had 4 or 5 clients. And they ranged from like a whole home historic renovation down to the studs to, designing a outdoor pool house bar area. And it was going great. And I was, reading up, watching YouTube videos, taking kind of like little online classes in design software, reading design blogs, reaching out to friends of mine who are designers and asking, what do I need to know? Do I need to go back to school? All of them said, no, don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. There's definitely a lot of advantages to that. But with where you are now, just in your life and your career, you kind of either have it or you don't.
Right.
Here's some practical advice. Here's some things we think you should know. Good luck. And it was going really well. And, it wasn't at the level it is now, which feels a little bit like being strapped to a rocket ship and figuring out how to drive it. But it was going great. And, I think social media certainly helped as well. I just started putting it out there. This is what I'm doing now. Let me know if you want to work with me. And just kind of slowly transitioned, the brand from, retail focused to interior focused.
That's so cool. Okay, let's take a pause here, get another word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank Gear Train for their support of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. Gear Train is a national program management company that specializes in the inspection and audit of conveyor systems, VRCs, robotics, and material handling equipment. Gear Train also manages routine maintenance and repair programs, as well as emergency callouts for clients all across the United States. Gear Train technicians have the experience to keep your automated equipment systems running at peak output. For all of your inspection, audit, and maintenance needs, reach out to Gear Train. They can be found online at geartrainperforms.com. And we are back with Hattie Collins. So, all right, so now you're getting your interior business rolling. And so social media was working for you?
It was. In the beginning, most of my requests came through social media. Before I had, rebranded and set up my new website, I had people messaging me. And so that was very much, just like when I had the boutiques, it was very much a kind of income channel for me. Yeah. And I was also, putting it out there quite a bit and showing, progress on these projects I was working on. So it was pretty obvious. This is kind of my new career path. And, but yeah, Instagram in particular has been such a great tool for me with my businesses. So initially, yes, now it has changed a bit. I'm finding people are, learning about me through articles I've been published in or, features, that, show my projects, or word of mouth from friends of theirs.
Yeah. Once you've done a good job with someone's home,
yeah.
And they're done. Okay, now you can have her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So, but with your boutique, you had employees. And when you're starting this, now you're all by yourself again. I mean, are you doing everything?
I do have one employee. Right. She's wonderful. She started with me in June. So I did it by myself for about a year and a half, I think. And so she came on. She is from New Orleans. She got her degree in math and then went back to school at LSU and got an interior design degree. So she helps me with floor planning, kind of more technical aspects, operational things. So she's been on with me since June, and that's been just a really wonderful, value add, not just on a personal level because she's wonderful, but on a professional level, it's so nice to have somebody to just bounce ideas off of and delegate things to, and she's great at her job.
So here's my experience with interior decorators is that they put ideas in front of you, pieces of furniture or all the things that y'all do that are beautiful, and you absolutely want them.
Yeah.
And you have to have them in your home, or at least, your better half has to have them in here. But they may or may not fit in the budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we recently had an experience, and so we end up, when we downsize in a smaller home, most of the furniture that we had in our bigger home would not have fit in this smaller downsized home. So we had to effectively start from scratch, which was great. But it's surprising how much money you can spend in a relatively small space.
It is. It tends to be a little pricier, I think, than people expect, especially if it's their first time working with a decorator or kind of leveling up with furniture and fixtures. The approach that I take is really different than a lot of other designers, and It's important to me to kind of keep it this way. I think there's a lot of mystery in this industry about, well, why does something cost what it costs, and where's my money going, and why am I being billed for this time? So it's not as exciting to take a budget first approach to a decorating project. Most designers want to take an aesthetic first approach and say, look at these beautiful things. Right. By the way, it costs 4 times more than what you want to spend. But I think, I'm a pretty pragmatic person, and I don't want clients to feel like they were tricked into something. I don't want them to feel in the dark about where their money is going. It's their money, right, and it's their home. They have to live with this stuff. And so from a practical standpoint, it made a lot of sense to me when I was starting to be really upfront with people about how much things cost. And I'm pretty transparent with the whole process, start to finish, what they're going to be spending, what they're going to spend on furniture, what they're going to spend on commissions, what they're going to spend on taxes and shipping and movers and labor, and then what they're going to spend on me and my fees. Because I've heard a lot of stories from clients who worked with a designer before me, or, fired that designer and brought me on, and it was always the same story. Things were showing up at my house that I hadn't approved, and then they billed me for, and then it was outside the return window, and now I'm stuck with this $900 table that I hate. Right. Or, I wasn't given enough choices, or I wasn't part of the process, or they went 4 times over budget, and now we can't buy the bed that we need because we spent all the money on the living room furniture. So, I listen to a lot of podcasts, about the interior design industry, and I listen to a lot of, especially episodes that talk about how it's changing and about how younger designers and people who are kind of coming into this field from a previous career are being a lot more transparent, because people want that. I know if I go spend money somewhere, I want to know what I'm getting, and I want to know when it's going to be there, and I want to know that, I'm not promised, $100 product, but then I'm pitched a $400 product. So we take a pretty straightforward approach, and I don't really hide a lot from my clients, and they know what they're getting with me. And I just think it keeps everybody happier in the end, because there's no surprises, and they feel like they can trust me. And that's kind of, I've recently been working with a business development coach, and she had me define the core values of my business. And one of them was, I want people to trust me, and I want people to know that we're going to be accountable to what we promise them. And so I just never want clients to feel like, oh, wow, she really overpromised and underdelivered. I want it to be, she really overdelivered on this, and that's great.
Yeah. It strikes me that you love what you do. Mm-hmm. And and you may have said this actually, but I mean, it seems like you enjoy that maybe even more than the retail side.
I think I do, and I've had a lot of people ask me, since I closed my second shop, would you ever go back into retail? Now that you're in interiors, would you ever open an interior, a home store? And I just don't think that's for me anymore. Where my life is now with kids, that would be pretty difficult to do. They're 3 years old. So, maybe 15 years down the road. But I love what I do because it allows me to be creative. It allows me to form relationships with people and, make those connections. It challenges me. I think, I felt pretty stagnant in the retail world after a while. In this industry, there's always a challenge. There's always something new to learn. There's always learning how to work with different personalities. One contractor is so different than another contractor. It's problem solving. I work on a lot of projects out of state. So I'm figuring out electricians and plumbers for a house off, on an island off Seattle, off the coast of Seattle.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm FaceTiming with them, and we're figuring out placements, and it feels really collaborative. And that's what I loved so much about retail when I first started, was this feeling of collaboration, this feeling of, we did it. Like, we all came together and we made this beautiful thing. And then forming friendships and relationships. And I think that's what really, I get a lot out of with this job. And then also seeing people happy in their homes. I mean, I have a client in Montana, and she, out of the blue, texted me photos of her. She's 8 months pregnant. She's in her kitchen that we redid. And she's like, I never thought, my kitchen could look like this. And I love it so much. And I feel so at peace here. And to me, that's so rewarding to see people living in these spaces that they, really allowed me to come into their home. They allowed me to, be creative and work with them and make a space that they are proud of and that they feel comfortable in. So I really love it. I think, I think it's the most fulfilled I've felt in, my career. Like I said, before we started, I've been working, I think, since I was like 15. My first job was when I was 12, and that's a whole story. But, I've been working pretty steadily since I was 15, and like, I love to work, and I love meeting people, and I love, kind of thinking on the go and adapting. And, but what I'm doing now really is, so fulfilling and brings me a lot of joy.
What I love is when you look at someone's career and to where you are right now and how much you love it, but it's made up, your ability to succeed in what you do is made up from all the lessons that you learned along the way, all the, struggles and the victories and the trials and tribulations, and which is really cool, right? Because you wouldn't be who you are today in business without all of those experiences. And at the same time, the world was changing, right? In how people purchase their goods. And so, a lot of retail may have suffered on their brick and sticks side of the business, but, picked up on the e-commerce. But e-commerce has been ruthless to so many retailers. It's really been a huge change. I mean, we're a half a mile from a massive Amazon facility being built right here, which can help retailers if they know how to engage with it or not.
Yeah, it can be. That's a hard world to navigate. And I did have an e-commerce platform for a while, and it did fine, and it brought, it was a nice revenue stream with the boutiques. But as Amazon grew and as other big retailers had these crazy return policies, you could return something after 90 days, I just found that I just didn't have the infrastructure to scale. And I also didn't have the infrastructure to meet people's expectations. I would have people try and return something 60 days after they bought it. And at that point, the rest of that product was gone. Or, I didn't have the manpower to hire, 2 people to run a fulfillment warehouse. And, I felt like I had to do that. And it was weird because it was also scaling down felt really difficult too, because if you scale down too small, it almost doesn't feel, the ROI is not there, and it's not worth the effort, to sell 4 products a month online, and now I have to pay a website fee and shipping and all of that. So, and shipping's a whole nother thing. We couldn't compete there either. It's so expensive. And, so it's tough. And I admire people that can do it and who do it well. It's really, really, hard. It was just not, my journey.
It seems like what you're doing right now, it seems very appealing. To me as a business person, like, it's you. It's like when the IT guy walks in your office, he doesn't have a briefcase, he doesn't have a tool bag.
Oh, I have a lot of stuff I schlep around every day. Don't be.
All your. But they just come in and they know how to do stuff. I'm like, I want to be that guy, But so as we wrap up, Hattie, let's talk about any vision that you have for the future. I mean, you're working all over the country now with projects. You're able to do that with minimal staff. How does the interior design business grow?
You grow by taking on more projects, which means expanding your staff. I am looking to hire somebody else to handle purchasing and freight logistics. My phone, I'm a little scared to check it after this, but so the bigger projects you take on and the more, large projects you take on, the more people you need to help. Yeah. And so we're at the max of what we can handle right now without hiring 1 to 2 more people.
But is that something you want to do? Is that something you
I think so. I think, in my previous career, there was very much this motivation to grow and expand and achieve and, kind of meet these benchmarks I had set for myself. And I'm not saying that I'm not motivated now, but now having, that experience behind me, I'm a little less in a hurry. And I want to grow and I want to take on, bigger projects, but I also don't want to grow too fast. When I opened my second location, we grew too fast. And backing off of that is harder than, layering on. I think about it. What my mom used to always say this to us. She was like, you can always, we were in Colorado. She's like, you can always take layers, or no, that's not a good example.
No, I understand what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
It's harder. It's easier to, kind of layer up than it is to, layer up really quickly and then have to scale back from that.
Yeah. Lessons learned.
Yeah. So I think one of my goals is to, only take on projects, and I'm kind of there now. And I say, when I am talking about my goals, I'm realizing like I'm there, I'm in them right now. Yeah. And so,
that's cool.
Only take on projects that have a certain budget threshold or that really kind of connect with me creatively. I really, and this is hard to do in New Orleans, I really would love to take on more new build projects. There's not a ton of new construction in New Orleans. And if it is, it's like a lot of builder grade. And, so I have one new construction project in Alabama, which is really exciting. So I think for us to grow, it's just about taking on larger projects and more of them. I don't know if that's going to be this year. We're pretty set through the end of the year.
Well, that's a good.
Yeah. So.
Well, look, I've seen your work online. It's beautiful what
you.
you do, and I can imagine your clients being very pleased with the end result. So, thank you for coming in. Thanks for sharing your story. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So this is our 65th podcast, and you can tell that every entrepreneur has their own journey. No two are alike. Some may seem as if there were very few hurdles in the entrepreneur's way. Others seem more typical where there were plenty of hurdles. And that is part of Hattie's story. Very typical for an entrepreneur to go through several iterations, but I love how every thing that she learned along the way has made who she is today a success. And at the root of all of that, in each of her business iterations, is relationships and trust. And I love that continuity through her story. So we appreciate her coming in. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.